care what you think about it. It's been partially, we've only been there if they had a lot of oil, because they've had a lot of oil. Brazil has paid over $500 million in duty. Now, we can talk all we want to the United States for bringing a cleaner fuel. Now, here's the comparison. It's not against ethanol. It's not against the blender's tax credit. It's against oil. Saudi oil came into the U.S. paying nothing. That is what is wrong. If we're serious about climate change, if we're serious about trying to build an alternative fuel market, what is the logic of giving free trade to the one fuel that we know causes us trouble, that does cause indirect effects, as Bob and I would agree, and tax the one that doesn't? Why not just say, well, you know, guys, let's just put a 1 penny a barrel of oil, a 1 penny tax on a barrel of oil. I guarantee you we couldn't even get that through. But somehow we like to pick on each other. And until we do that, and Rob, this is where I think you're fundamentally wrong, until we say, well, you can get your product into Europe, none of our companies are ever going to grow if all we do is fight over a very little small pond.
So, I will absolutely agree with you that it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever that the United States puts absolutely no ad valorem duty on oil and puts a 2.5% ad valorem duty on Brazilian ethanol. That is something that should be corrected. There should be parity there as well. But when you say that you have paid $500 billion in, or was it $500 million in tariffs to the United States, you also need to acknowledge that there was benefit that came back to Brazil in the form of the tax incentive. Now, again, we agree there should be parity, but let's not inflame the discussion, and let's absolutely keep the target on oil. We are fighting over such a small market. We ought not be cannibalizing each other's market. We ought to be building new markets. We ought to be recognizing that the target is petroleum and that the Mother Earth is dying because of our dependence on petroleum, and if we don't get low-carbon fuels into the marketplace quickly, the consequences will be dire. We do also need to, as President Clinton said on Monday, try to get some economic value to that carbon reduction, and therein would provide Brazil potentially with some additional economic value, but only if we bring low-carbon fuels to the world market, and only if carbon is given some economic value that it does not have.
May I interrupt just at this moment? This was not a question, was a cry. Look how it was written. And it says, why don't you get, I'm sorry, I repeat, why don't you quit fighting with each other and form an international organization to promote ethanol worldwide? Well, moment, get with it. And there is another question which is very much related to this one. What are the possibilities of ethanol being classified as an environmental good by the WTO, and what are the consequences for the global market?
We built this global alliance already. The RFA, the CRFA, the Canadians, us, Argentina, Southern Africa, India, we established the Global Renewable Fuels Alliance. And we have been discussing at length with UNICA to join this alliance. And unfortunately, it hasn't happened so far. So thank you for the question so that we are able to answer it and to say that's already there. Now we are waiting for the Brazilians, because you cannot truly have a global alliance if one of the biggest biofuel producers is not there. So again, the door is open, and let's discuss all the 99% of the issues we agree upon, Joel. And maybe we disagree on this 1%, but we sort that.
Let me just reiterate what Rob has said, because we have formed, and just a few months ago, so it's not a long thing that's been out there, but there is a Global Renewable Fuels Alliance. We have invited UNICA to participate. Even before the alliance was formed, we have worked together on a number of different letters and projects on international issues as they have arisen, and the success of those efforts led to the formation of this alliance. We hope that Joel or Marcos, you'll join us at some point, because it is a forum for us to agree. It is a forum for us to refute a lot of the negative that is out there about the worldwide biofuels industry. And I agree with Rob, it would be critically important for Brazil, for UNICA, to participate with us, and will formally and publicly extend the invitation again.
André? Oh, I think André was first, Raul, if you allow.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the question of why don't we stop fighting and going ahead, I would like to say that, in fact, we only fight when we are together, when there are those that, you know, in front of the oil people, we are together. Now, we work together, really, in many international fora. Because I'm not going to say nice things about what you said, but the fact is that, really, you have helped to create the American market. And the creation of American market is an absolutely essential step. The European Commission, the European Union, has decided to also create a European market for biofuels. These are the two essential steps, because before the US and the EU joined in this debate, ethanol and biofuels were just a curiosity from a faraway emerging country. Now it is a reality of the two biggest markets, and I think that we have to recognize this. But the problem is that, like it or not, let's say it sincerely, both in the US and in the European Union, this policy towards biofuels started as an agricultural policy. It was something that was supported by the agricultural lobby, which is great. And any when you talk about agricultural lobby, you're talking about protections. So we have to go a step further. And I agree, you have created a certain market. We can have a much bigger market. But what worries me is then when we enter into the sustainability issue. Because the sustainability issue, you can call it something very good for humanity, etc., etc. But basically, the most enthusiastic people about sustainability are the protectionists. There's no doubt. Because the environmentalists are not convinced about this issue, etc. So we have to put this debate of sustainability, which is key. I totally agree that sustainability is key. Because if we succeed, as we know in Brazil we can, do biofuels in a very sustainable way in the three pillars, we are going to create even more a market.
André, the sustainability criteria we are not happy about at all. We, as European producers, have never asked for it. If we could produce without them, we would prefer that, absolutely. So it's a burden to you, and it's a burden to us. That be very, very clear. What one said, keep that sustainability crap at home, and unfortunately I can't. I would, I could, but yeah.
It's actually not in my vernacular, but that's right.
Who's going to talk next? Nick?
I'm not sure I recognize that assertion about sustainability and protectionism. I can only quote from the evidence of the only known on-the-ground reporting scheme in the world, which is the RTFO in the UK. We consider greenhouse gas savings in the UK the objective of biofuel usage. That's the government's clear and sole intent is to see significant greenhouse gas reduction. Incidental benefits about economic development in the agricultural sector or security supply are secondary. But as we've said before, this is not biofuels at any price. It is about ensuring the sustainability. And it's true that the empirical measures we put in place are environmental and to some extent social, but nevertheless it's about sustainability. If the association between the sustainability and protectionism was there, you would not see the diversity of feedstocks and countries of origin that are actually happening in the public domain data we're publishing. It is true that some will hide behind descriptions of processes or countries of origin as a way of being protectionist in the nature, but do not assume that sustainability measures are put in place in order to prevent imports. In the UK, 6% of the biofuels in use are of domestic origin. And that's not because they don't meet sustainability criteria, it's because it's cheaper to import from countries around the world. That's why those are the products that are bought.
Michael.
Yeah, I'd like to put a little reality check in the room. You do not have anyone from the national environmental organizations on this panel here. And in the last month, I've had a chance to talk to several of the U.S. and worldwide national environmental organizations, and they're not as nearly as keen on biofuels as the people in this room are. And I just think from a reality check, you all need to understand that there's a split amongst major worldwide organizations whether biofuels have a role to play or whether we should just put a plug-in hybrid vehicle before we deal with carbon sequestration as the path to the future. And already in Washington, D.C., you see a number of provisions passed in the bill out of the House Commerce Committee 2 weeks ago that move in the direction of moving away from liquid fuels and creating a smart grid and creating a transportation structure which is about electricity. Now, both the Natural Resources Defense Council and the Environmental Defense Fund are withstanding the assertion that biofuels don't have a role to play in the future of transportation fuels, because they understand you can't hook an electric cord to an airplane or a train, and they understand that the transportation system for heavy-duty trucks and heavy-duty farm tractors and others don't necessarily go with the model of a smart grid and flipping the switch on and off. So we have to get together here. I mean, one of the things that I'm a little confused with, and I would love for Bob's leadership on, is he has 15 billion gallons of production in the United States. My guys are just trying to come into production. Yet in the law, ESA, in 2007, you grandfathered yourself out from under any climate change restrictions. Why don't you show us the leadership? Why don't you help partner with the advanced technologies? And why don't we put some sustainability goals that we can both agree to, and maybe we could propose our own cap and trade for biofuels reductions rather than have the environmental community give them to us in ways we can't all meet. Thank you.
Yeah. That is exactly the point. We have to agree on what we consider sustainability. Because as Nick has just shown, sustainability for a developed country like Great Britain is reduction of CO2. We have to remember that he comes from a country that has less than 3% renewables in its energy matrix. So I understand that perfectly. But if we are going to produce biofuels in developing countries, and that's where I say that there is the opportunity, we have to take into consideration what sustainability really is. You have 3 pillars. If you have income generation, if you have co-generation of energy, if you have production of cooking fuel, if you have the substitution of oil, which is one of the greatest burden for underdeveloped countries, for the lowest income countries in Africa, these are sustainability criteria that we think have to be taken into consideration. Not only the sustainability from the definition of the European Union or the United States, because I know you were born rich, you cannot understand the poor. It's very understandable. You see on TV. So the other thing is that what we need, and we are doing in some forums, is that we are discussing a common approach of what sustainability is. And I think that is the key. I'm totally favorable. Brazilian government is totally favorable to sustainability issues because it's absolutely key, and we think that we are excellent at that, and we can help other developing countries to go to that. But the debate has to be a fair debate, and sustainability have to be defined by all of us.
André, I agree. And the fact of the matter is the U.S. ethanol industry has shown leadership. The renewable fuel standard that was passed for the very first time, any place across the globe, created reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that would need to be met. Now, Michael, the reason there was grandfather provisions in there is because the rules were changing in the middle of the